Hello everyone, welcome back to this week's video.
Today's topic, we're going to be telling you about forward driving.
So forward driving, it's a bit of an interesting topic to make a video about, but before we begin, as usual, I'm going to explain to you why we chose this topic because it won't make sense otherwise. So as you may know, 2 weeks ago we missed a week's upload and we just uploaded last week as you saw the meditation video. But the reason we missed that week's upload is because in our in our state, in our country, a bit of borders opened up. They released a few less. They basically eased restrictions, and we could go further. The radius we could travel was further. So what we did, we sort of went on a little mini holiday to the Grampians, which is a little tourist attraction in Victoria, and it's quite popular in Australia. So we went there. It's basically, we'll show you a photo on the screen. Had a lot of nature there, a lot of mountains. It's known for like going for hikes, and we really like the idea of living somewhere with all the trees within nature. Being one with nature. But basically, our car wasn't doing very well because we had sort of made for the streets, sort of sports car, and it wasn't really made for that. So we sort of got into looking at forward drives, and hence how we got into forward driving. So that's why we decided to make this video.
Yeah, our car isn't currently compatible for a forward driving lifestyle. You can't, like, once we got stuck in literally like the smallest pothole we went to some national park, and the parking was a bit rough there because of some it was potholes formed from water and stuff like
And
that.
there's like a few like bumps or like some
Yeah, and we had to
roots or something.
get towed out. So a forward drive is definitely compatible. Today we're going to be talking to you about what you need to go forward driving, just to broadly say it, and
Also, how to
and
forward
how
drive in certain situations
and how to forward drive in certain terrains.
Yeah, and so we basically just researched sort of some of the basic gear because this is stuff because we were thinking of getting a forward drive, things that we would do with our forward drive and what we would add to it. So without any more time wasting, let's begin.
Okay, to start this video off, we're going to be talking about what you need to go forward driving. So first off, we're just going to start off. When we talk about this, we're going to start off with the basics. So basically, essential items that you need, like just like things like to pack with you that are important and might come in handy. And then we're also going to be talking about modifications to your vehicle and extra items that you can bring along with you.
And then we'll also talk about some recovery gear you need that's also essential.
Yeah,
but we're sort of split it into 3 separate sections.
Recovery gear is very important. That's going to be the last one of the what you need to go for a drive. Okay, first off, we got essentials you should bring. So I just got a little list here, and I'm going to basically go through what each thing is good for. So the first thing, it's kind of a piece of gear, and it could be recovery gear or it could be an item, but it's probably the most essential piece of gear. So I'll add it in the essentials. It's a shovel. A shovel has multi-purpose use, and it's crucial for forward driving. Say you get stuck in sand or something, and you need a shovel to help get out. You can basically dig up and
Say your
dig up
wheels
some
are very
sand.
deep in.
Yeah, you're bogged, and you basically need to dig up some sand and make a little ramp to help you get towed out, or just to help you drive up. And it could also happen. It could also be you need to build a track. Say you're stuck in mud or something. It's very handy. If you go on any forward driving video for like things you should bring, shovels usually always first on the list. Okay, another thing I want to say is a UHF radio. So a UHF radio is basically those. It's basically a walkie-talkie, but more advanced. Here, I'll put one on screen. So they're very helpful and very important. If you got to get them, you definitely have to get two. I'll tell you why. Say you're basically you got stuck, or you're in a difficult track, right? And someone needs to get out the car and kind of direct him, like say oh, just turn a little left or something like that. And the car's very loud and it could be distracting, yelling. So the UHF radio, you can basically talk. One person's telling him, yeah, just go left. It's basically just makes communication much easier. So it's very helpful. Yeah, so definitely recommend getting that. And you don't actually need an expensive one. There's a certain wattage they have. The expensive ones are 3 watts. A lot of people say if you're just beginning, 1 watt or even a half watt, 0.5 watt UHF radio is more than enough. Okay. So another very important thing that is definitely a must-have is a first aid kit. So if you get a forward drive, or just say you have another car, that comes with a medical kit, so first aid kit. It's usually very basic, like it might come with a few bandages and a few things. It's always recommended, from what I've heard, it's always recommended to make upgrades to your first aid kit or buy a whole new one that has everything you need, because you never know when a certain medical tool might come in handy.
Yeah, better safe than sorry. It's a very important thing in anything you do. So always put your health first. Never be reluctant to put your health first. Always make sure that's taken care of first.
Okay, yeah. All right. Another thing is paper maps. So when I say maps, you maybe think I'm talking about GPS. You're like, why do I need paper maps? Can't I just use a GPS? Some people say you don't even need a GPS for driving. So the reason you want to get a paper map, and a lot of them, and different types of them, is say basically you need to find you running low on gas and you need to know where the nearest gas station is. That will tell you, because there's no reception for your phone. So this the mobile GPS, or the one you can buy for your car, doesn't have some of the features. Like, it can't tell you like hospitals. It won't tell you numbers. It won't tell you. It won't tell you just information. A lot of the maps have information to sites and information of what to watch out for. And there's a lot of good information, a lot of good tips in there that definitely help you out. Even a booklet could have so many different pages. You can get maps. You get nearest. It'll tell you where the nearest service station is. You'll get where the hospitals are in case of emergency, police, etc.
Yeah, because when you're going forward driving, the reception never works. Like, we just went on that mini holiday to the Grampians, and we didn't even have Wi-Fi on our place, and half the time reception was barely on. And usually when you go forward driving, they're in like places really not very populated, and they're very rural.
Yeah, and when we went for a hike, and when we drove up to the car park, basically where the hike starts, there was no reception there. So from then on, we're basically just working with the signs along the trail and other people's help, basically. Okay, another thing which is very crucial for human survival, and that is water. So we can only go 2 to 3 days without water, so before it's too late. So it's an absolute must.
Obviously,
Yeah.
But what we mean by this is basically pack an extra like big compartment of water, because this can be used for your vehicle as well as for drinking water.
Yeah, and they say always say you pack a giant jerry can, like water jerry can, like 20 liters or something. Even if you say, I'll tell you, because they say get two. So you think I get two for more water. Like I get, instead of getting two 10-liter, I'll just get a 20-liter one. Even if you have a big container full of water, it's always recommended to get two, because if you lose one, you'll always have a spare. So no matter what size, no matter water you bring, always have two for a spare.
Yeah, because these forward driving trips, usually they're like camping trips. So you pretty much go prepare as if you're going for a long camping trip.
And even if it's not camping, say you get stuck and you need water, literally anything could happen. You might be waiting for a tow truck and it's very hot outside and you're in the middle of nowhere, Anything could happen. Water is very important.
Especially in Australia.
Yeah, that's where we are. Okay. A toolkit. So a toolkit is just a simple and handy thing to have when you're going forward driving. You just need a simple toolkit, or just with some tools maybe even just some tools you have at home, because you're not here to be a mechanic, so you don't need like the whole setup full of tools, because it's good if you already know how to fix some things, so you may pack some extra tools. But say you just need something to I don't know, fix your tire real quick or tighten something, so it's good just to have the simple tools, and you never know when you might need a tool, so they're very good.
When you're on the road, forward driving, things, especially if you're doing very difficult tracks, I wouldn't know that much about it, but because we've just been researching. But I've heard that you've got to fix your car a lot, and especially if you're doing a difficult track, it's very important to go with multiple people to be able to fix your car. So make sure you know your car, and make sure you bring the appropriate tools to be able to fix anything that could possibly happen during the trip.
Yeah, and there is one tool that if you don't have, it's recommended to go and buy. It's cheap, it's not expensive, and that is a bottle jack. So these bottle jack, put it on screen. That's how it looks like. It's you never know when you might get stuck and you need to basically use it, and it's always recommended. Watch any video, they'll say bottle jack. Okay, next thing you need. I think this is one of the last things on this list, and that is a miscellaneous kit. So you may think, why do I need a miscellaneous kit? What, just some random things? So a miscellaneous kit will contain some items that can basically help with simple problems. It can contain something like duct tape, cable ties, wire, and ratchet straps. They're basically just spare extras that you might say like something goes wrong, but you only have like special tools to fix, but you don't need it. You can just use the miscellaneous kit, like duct tape something up, tie something with wire to hold it together. So you don't have to use any of your expensive equipment. So that's always just a very handy thing to have. Okay, the last thing on the essentials you should bring list is a spare tire. This is just as important as something like, well, not water, but just as important as something like a first aid kit, because a spare tire, basically, you never know when your tire might go out. So, and one important thing when you have a spare tire with you, you have to make sure it's the exact same size. It doesn't have to be the same tire or like same quality or same brand.
Mm.
You just have to be the same size, or basically it's not going to work properly. So
Yeah.
your car might already come with a spare tire, which is great.
Most
Always
four-wheel
check.
drives
Always
do.
check it's the right size, or you're basically stuffed if you need to change the tire.
A lot of people actually take 2 spare tires when they're going on a more advanced trip. But most, proper forward driving vehicles that you'd buy to go proper forward driving would contain a spare tire.
Yeah, the
as
one-
you see in this photo right
The
here.
one that sits on the back, or sometimes
Or
they sit
underneath.
under the car. Yeah.
Yeah, but minimum one, if you can too.
Okay, that's everything for essentials you should bring. Now we're on to forward driving items and modifications. Okay, so now we're on forward driving items and modifications. Just before I go into this, I just want to mention this could also be on the list, but I should have added to essentials, and that is spare fuel. So you can
jerry cans.
get jerry cans of spare fuel. You never know how you might want to stay for longer, and you got no service stations with fuel around, so extra fuel is always handy. Okay, now onto this list.
So first, identification slash item, sorry, slash modification. We're going to talk about what you need to do to your suspension. Now, most vehicles come with decent suspension, but if you want to think about doing forward driving, where you want to make sure
tracks.
everything's taken care of, you want to first lift your suspension. Now, for lifting your suspension, they say for most scenarios and most vehicles, you want to do it around 2 inches lift, so around 5 centimeters.
But this is for forward driving, and this is for like forward driving when you're like going through like rocky areas. So a suspension lift is important. A 2-inch suspension lift, or even something slightly higher than that, can put pressure on your CV, which is basically your constant velocity joint. And what the constant velocity joint is, it provides drive to your front wheels.
And these are the type of things that when there's like little problems, like things break, these are the type of things. So you want to make sure it all works together. Good.
Yeah. So if you have high suspension, that basically puts a lot of pressure on your CV,
because the alignment isn't how it was designed initially.
So when you basically get your suspension done, like lifted, first of all, you want to get it checked with a suspension specialist, and that is usually checked to your final weight of your forward drive, and basically he'll tell you probably what, or she will tell you the suspension lift you should get, and any fixes you need to do to your suspension in general, just to get it all, to make sure nothing to get under too much pressure and nothing will break. So to get your suspension right, you want to go to a suspension specialist and get your suspension
Suited for the weight of your car.
Suited for the end weight of your vehicle.
And so you want to make sure all your things that you usually take on your trip would be weighed, because that does make a difference. All right, so sticking to the things that basically are within your vehicle, there's some things you want to be adding in order to be able to go through certain terrains, and like water. So firstly, most stock vehicles or forward drives, you might see them a lot in the showrooms with this. This is called a snorkel. So the snorkel, a lot of people be confused about what its purpose is actually mainly used, or its sole purpose as advertised is to be used to take basically in cleaner and cooler air, because obviously when the more lower down it is, the dirtier the air and the warmer the air because of the exhaust. So basically what it does, it just puts it at a higher level, so it's taking in clean air. But another very good benefit that the snorkel has is when you're going into, say, like a little pond, or like a pond that would be higher than the regular intake point of the vehicle, is basically making it at a higher point. So say you're going in water, there's not going to be any water coming in because the intake point is going to be high on the vehicle. It's a very simple thing. We'll show a photo. You can probably see it on this car as well, but we'll show a close-up photo for you to know exactly how it looks like. But this is a very important, it's a very basic things. Most dealerships you can pay a little bit extra to get one. Okay, another thing you want to add is going to be a diff breather. So diff is short for differential. So what a diff breather does, it's basically it's an extension. So your normal differential has a breather, but it's very low down because the differential is quite low down in the car. So the intake point is quite low. So it's like a little thing. We'll show a photo. So what the diff breather is, it's sort of an extension hose that goes higher up in the engine bay, and it basically makes, like with the snorkel, it at a higher intake point. So when you're going into things like water and things of that nature, you won't get things seeping into that thing because it's obviously at a higher point. Another thing you want to do, and this is probably more important, it's the same thing, but it's for your transmission. So it's also an extension hose that goes higher, just so your intake point's higher, so no water gets into your engine or anywhere like that, because that can be very expensive to fix, and of course you don't want that. And these things aren't very expensive, I'm sure, so a definite thing you want to be adding.
Okay, so one thing that a lot of SUVs come with, and a lot of SUVs actually have, is a bull bar. And a bull bar is crucial because it's not crucial, but most cars have it. Most SUVs have it because of the just because of how useful
Protecting
they
the
are.
front of your car, as well as when you're going into the bush, there's going to be a lot of sticks and trees, and say you want to even like push something, the bull bar, it's sort of like common sense, you got to have a bull bar. But the thing is, the stock ones, if they have one, they're usually not the greatest of quality, so I would definitely suggest, well, I wouldn't suggest, but a lot of people suggest that you get
aftermarket.
a very decent one, and make sure it has extra lights on it as well.
Yeah, and the bull bar, since it's at the front, it protects the cooling system of the vehicle, which is very important. And it prevents scratches. And say you're just on the road, not for driving, a bull bar can protect you from crashes. It might not be so good for the other vehicle, but you're more likely to be safe. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is bash plates. So bash plates are basically metal plating that goes under your vehicle to protect your vitals. So say when you go in water
or rocks,
so you don't get scratched, it's basically very important. A lot of vehicles come with technically a bash plate already.
Standard.
They're either plastic, which do no good. They're basically they get stuffed up. They don't actually protect the vehicle, or a thin layer of tin, which is also no good. So these are proper metal. It might be aluminium or whatever it is, proper metal, and it basically protects the bottom of your car and protects your vitals, whatever under the car. Should more likely to be safe.
And that's also why suspension lift is very important to get much more distance off the ground, so you can do a lot of rock crawling and going over sharp surfaces where you'll be safe and your car will be safe as well. Another thing to protect your vitals that is very important is bar work. So this basically goes, I'll show a picture because it's kind of hard to explain. It goes around the front and the sides of your car, and these things are very good because it basically protects the body of your car, the outside of your car, and like the doors and things. And they also actually act as like a step up to your door of the car.
So you have a tall car with lifted suspension that can be
most of them do. Yeah, most of them are. So basically what this does, it protects your car, from getting, indentations or, just getting scratches in general. And it's sort of a must-have when you consider going forward driving. So I can show you this. I watched a video and this guy, he said, basically, you've got to have these because there's so many scenarios where it would have been hit, but it didn't. But these things will get damaged and they will get hit pretty bad, but you'd rather that than your car. And that's what they're for. It means they're doing their job correctly.
Okay, another thing that a lot of people recommend getting, especially when going solo, is a winch. So getting a good quality winch for more reliability is definitely useful. If you're buying a secondhand car, try find one with a winch on it, or you're buying it off someone. try find one with a winch, as they'll save you a lot of hassles of buying it, as they can be expensive, the good ones. And basically, a winch can help you get out of any sticky situation. Say you're with a few people going forward driving, they can winch you out, connect it to your recovery point, and basically winch you out. The winch will start pulling and help you get out.
Or you could just
You
connect
by
it to
yourself,
a rock or
yeah,
a tree.
you can tie it to a tree or a rock yourself, and it'll help you get out. So it's a winch is very helpful. Just saying, a lot of the things on this list are definitely extras and are definitely things that you should upgrade to. There are some essentials like a bull bar could be like something you definitely want to look for. A winch also if you're going forward driving, and some of the things that we're going to talk about further in this list are essential or almost essential.
Yeah, but because we make it seem like all these small things, if you don't have, your car will get wrecked. These are just things to have peace of mind, and also it only takes one time for them to be worth it.
One time they'll help you is that's all it takes to be worth it.
And you rather just spend a bit more money on modifications to protect your car, and first of all make your car, the longevity of your car better, it'll last longer. And worst comes to worst, your car fully gets wrecked and you can't drive it anymore, and you have to buy a new one. So definitely make sure you consider getting these things for the specific things you want to do.
Okay, so for the winch to work and to attach things like snatch straps and attach things, you need a recovery point. And a vehicle may already come with one, but it's not exactly rated. No vehicle, I think, comes with a rated recovery point. And rated means it's basically suitable for rated shackles. So basically, you're not going to it's not going to come off the vehicle and fly.
It's not going to snap off.
It's not going to snap off. So you want to get a rated recovery point.
And
so
these things aren't expensive at all.
Yeah, they're not that expensive. So you get a rated recovery point because they do not come stock. So you need to get a aftermarket one. And
get them at the front and the rear end.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk about something that doesn't really apply to SUV forward drives, but some of the things that are within the thing we're about to talk about can apply to that. So this applies to utes because this is a canopy. So a canopy is basically a mounted structure to the tray or the tub of your ute with roof and walls.
It's like that thing you see on a ute that basically makes it like connects to the other car. We'll show a photo. It's very basic.
Yeah, it has access points, doors, it has drawers for supplies. And basically, if you have a ute, you don't need one if you're going super forward driving, but
if you're going for a longer camping trip.
Yeah, it's a very efficient way of storage and setting up for long trips. And basically, in there, you want to have things like fridges for
for camping,
food and drinks. You want to have things like sometimes if you have a big enough canopy, you can build a mini kitchen in there, like basically a stove with some compartments for cooking, and that's for camping. It comes very handy.
You also gotta want to have some like compartments to fit your tools to take. That's very important.
Yeah.
And also, there's obviously used for storage, so you can fit a lot of your storage in there, not just on the roof rack.
And canopies, they're not all the same. A lot of them have completely different compartments. A lot of them are bigger. Sometimes you can even get a half canopy because sometimes you want open space for something, and maybe it's all you need.
Or just a smaller vehicle.
And that's sometimes better for weight balance. And you can basically you can even get a custom made one. It might cost you a little more or something, but custom made one you can basically pick where your storage. Because say you may have a bigger tent or a bigger fridge. You need a custom canopy. So canopy is different for everyone. So if you're thinking about getting one, definitely look around, look at some of the items you're thinking of getting to put in there, and customize it yourself.
Yeah, because a canopy is sort of a must if you're planning on going for, longer camping trips. So if you're really serious about going like proper, holidays with your forward drive, it's sort of a must have. It's sort of just like the second half of your car, for storage and for everything else. And so that's got to do it for canopies.
Yeah, so that doesn't apply to SUVs, but some of the stuff you put in there, like fridges, you can just put in there. You can put it in any SUV. And now you want to get something that's called basically it's an extra battery. Because say you have things like fridges or, I don't know, toasters maybe.
Or you just want to charge electronics.
Yeah, or electronics. Basically, you got to put a lot of strain on the battery of doing that. So it's very recommended if you're going on a long trip and you've got to be packing a lot of things like that require require
To be
things from the
charged
battery.
or
Yep.
power.
You want to get something called a 12-volt battery, and that should be enough.
You can get as much as you think you need, but you want to get at least a spare battery source, so you don't have to worry about it. And obviously, you're gonna want it if you're gonna have something like a fridge.
It's just always good to have in case, if you want a self like relying basically a vehicle with everything you need. You can survive and live like normally while being rural. A battery, a 12-volt battery really helps with that.
Yep. So next, we're going to talk about your tires, and there's a bit to this. First, we just got to talk about which tires you got to want to get. So with tires, there are two main tires. I'm pretty sure when you're talking about going off roading. So there's mud terrain and all terrain. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So mud terrain, as the name implies, is obviously for muddy areas. Maybe they have more traction for you, more traction, or they're better maybe for design for like sandy or muddy, more wet surfaces. But then there's also all terrain, which is also, as the name implies, just overall a well-rounded tire, and you can't really go wrong, and they do the job for most terrains. So if you're thinking about buying tires for your vehicle and you're not really sure what type of things you're going to be doing, you just want to do a bit of everything, you got to want to probably get all terrains. Now, this is very important. Sean will explain.
Yeah, so for driving, your tire should have a different PSI. So the car you get, the 4-drive you get, should have a stated vehicle tire play card for off-roading, but which tells you which is a good PSI. But for most 4 drives, that's between 30 PSI and 38. So when you go in different terrains, you'll have to lower your PSI, and that's why a air compressor is very important, because some people say you don't need it. Well, you definitely do need it if you're going in different terrains and you need to pump up your tires, and say you have no service station to pump it up. It's definitely handy to have. And you want to get something that basically has the from the basically, I forgot what it's called.
It's called a tire gauge.
Tire gauge. That's the one. So you want to get a tire gauge.
So you can lower it to the specific PSI you want.
It tells you the right PSI, and just get an air compressor with the tire gauge on it. Don't buy them separately. I guess it'll cost you more. And sometimes they're not 100% accurate. Say it's 38, it might show 37,
but
36.
It'll do the job.
As long as all tires are the same. That's what's important. As long as they're all showing the same.
Yeah, so in forward driving, this was quite surprising when I first found out. You're got to be changing your tires pressure constantly, especially on softer surfaces and going in in water areas, like in sand. Like I'll explain later, but it's much lower, and it's not like a specific thing you have to go exact. But especially if it's a trickier area, you definitely want to go for around the same PSI recommended. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for items and mods.
If we missed anything, we might touch back on it later in the video, but for now, I think that's it.
So now we've got to go on to recovery gear. Now, this sort of has to do with the other things. We didn't mention certain things in the last things we just talked about, but we will mention them here. Okay,
so now on to recovery gear. Recovery gear is very important because you might get stuck and you need some things to help you out, and they can be very helpful. So say you just occasionally forward drive, so this is for beginners. You occasionally forward drive, and sometimes going outdoor / wilderness trips with your family, you can get away with just a basic kit. And that basic kit should have things like a shovel, which we mentioned in essentials, a tire deflator, because say you need to go through something like sand and you need to lower basically your PSI. But a tire deflator with a tire gauge will tell you the exact PSI.
You don't 100% need a tire deflator. Most times, because tire gauge is just fine. It's just if you want to get the best of the best, pretty much.
Sometimes not necessarily. You never know when you might have to change your PSI. The basically the wilderness is endless. There can be different terrains everywhere you go. Yeah, and you should also have a bottle jack. But for that, you need a plate or some sort of flat platform. It can be a block of wood, just a offcut, a straight one. Because to properly jack your car, you need to have a flat surface, so that is important for anyone, not just for basic kit.
Because in the where you're usually in the bush, where you're doing your forward driving the
Very
surface,
uneven
like
surfaces.
just like in this photo, there's like very bumpy, uneven surface, and it just won't work properly. So get some sort. It can be just like a wooden like a wooden block that's like flat and covers decent enough surface area for your tires. So just anything like that can hold.
Okay, another thing you want is Max Tracks. They're either Max Tracks or Recovery Tracks. I think Max Tracks maybe is just a brand or a certain type of recovery track. Basically, you want to get 2 of these, and 4 won't do any harm. 4 is really recommended. These basically what they do, we'll put it on screen. You basically they look kind of like mini surfboards kind of thing, but obviously with their own look. And you basically they help you get out. Say it's a soft surface, they basically work as a surface, and 4 obviously helps because 4 tires, and 4 is definitely recommended.
We'll show how they use. We're showing you a little clip.
Okay, just to add to the basic kit, which you don't have to get, but this basic kit is called the Basic Kit Plus. I could call it that. And you want to get a front and rear recovery point, which basically helps for attaching things like a snatch strap. And you need a snatch strap, which is next on the list. You need a snatch strap and 2 winch blankets.
So we're just going to show you a video now of a snatch strap. And
being in use.
I would say this could even be like a must-have if you're already including the other things in your basic kit, we call it. A snatch strap is very important. We're just showing you on a video now how it's used.
As I just said, they're called winch blankets. Those things that you said, you want 2 of those. You put them on the line, basically, just to see where the line is. So, if in case something breaks or snaps, you can see where the line is or someone doesn't walk through it, And you want to get 2 of those for safety. And they're called winch blankets, but they can also be used for the snatch strap. Apparently, they help with contain dampness or something with that on the snatch strap. I heard it in a video. Not exactly sure, but it helps. It helps with that, and it can be used basically for the same way.
And the thing is, like the things with the max tracks and the snatch straps, these things go hand in hand. You use the snatch strap and you use the max tracks to help the car roll out, because that might not be enough. Because the snatch strap, the way it works, it's sort of like a rubber band. It might not be enough.
It's flexible, and the thing I'm going on to now is basically it's not for basic, but say if you go for a drive frequently or small groups of people, you should have maybe you can get some of the things from this kit. So that requires also 4 max tracks or recovery tracks. Now you want to get an extension strap. So this basically helps in case your snatch strap's not long enough or you need an extension. This helps. Things like extension straps and other straps, you do not want to get confused with snatch straps. So it should say on some sort of writing, it says which one it is. Say you use something like an extension strap or just another strap instead of a snatch strap, because they look very similar. It's not going to work. It might snap because a snatch strap is flexible. These straps basically just use for extra material to make length. You know what I mean? And you also want to get a soft shackle. So you attach a shackle to the recovery point, and then that's where you attach the snatch strap. I think that's right. And you can get a soft shackle, or you can get it's a metal shackle or a hard one. The soft shackles are more expensive, but they are apparently better. So you can choose which one you want to get. And you should also get a tree trunk protector, which can be used. The tree trunk protector it's for protecting the tree. But this one, you want to get it to use as a bridle strap. I'm not exactly sure what a bridle strap is 100%. But I'll put a photo of a bridle strap here so you can get an idea of it. But it says bridle strap if you have a winch. A rope snatch block or steel cable compatible snatch block. And I think a snatch block is something you basically attach. It's an attachment piece to make the snatch work. So you want to get that too. Okay, so now say you're a solo traveler and you go for driving casually sometimes by yourself or with the family or just a few passengers in the seat, which is got to be in our case if we go for driving. You want to get a shovel, a tire deflator, like we said before, a rear and front recovery point, 2 soft shackles, because shackles can be very handy, and 2 winch/recovery blankets. Okay, you want to get a Factor 55 hook. I got this in the list. I'm not 100% sure it is. I'll put it on screen. If you find out about it, I'm sure it's useful. A splicing kit, so it's for the winch rope. I'll put it on screen too, and a little clip there, and it basically it helps with the winch rope. I'm not sure about that too, but it's important. You want to get an extension strap for the solo traveler 2. 2 tree trunk protectors. They can be used as multi-use. They can be used as a bridle strap, like I said before, and maybe just a tree trunk protector in itself. You also want to get an extra strap just to secure and to pull things with. You can never have too many straps for driving. I think that's what I've learned from this, because straps can be used for so many different things. Snatch straps are used specifically for that, but you can use them other things to actually basically straighten things out. You can use them as extension straps. Just like you can use a tree trunk protector as an extension strap and to straighten things out. Their straps are very handy in forward driving. You also want to get a snatch block,
as we said earlier.
Yep, a jack of your choice. So you can get just the jack. You can get a bottle jack or a high lift jack, and you can basically just pick of your choice. It's just whatever you think you need. You should get.
Yep.
And now there's something. It's a cool piece of equipment. I think it's like the most multi-use recovery strap / recovery anchor in the world. Mm-hmm. It's called the Dead Man. I put it on screen and it looks like a yellow parachute looking thing. So you want to get one of those, and you want to get max straps / recovery tracks. You want to get a snatch strap, very helpful, and a remote for the winch. That's recommended. A remote for a winch.
And these things, you definitely won't need all these things, but if you're going extreme, but you can just pick for each of these things if you'll need it or not. And so, in conclusion to recovery gear, it seems that the solo traveler, tends to have the most gear, because you might think, say, like with a snatch strap, that I might need it because if I'm going myself, there's no possible way someone else could, pull me out. But don't be tricked by that, because there's a lot of cases where someone else might come along and help you out. Because the thing is, when someone's helping you, the way it works is basically it's your gear that is used, because if in a case where the strap is rips, just for the courtesy, it's like the courteous thing to do to use your equipment. So that's why it's recommended. They should say pack extra things. Say you're going on a convoy, you basically organize with the group you're going with of what you need, and so everyone has enough. But you don't want to pack everything. But remember, this is just if this is like to the max, and you'll be able to go anywhere with this gear. But just look at the gear that we've mentioned, and basically pick which ones that you won't need. But things like the snatch strap and things of that nature is definitely things you want to take, regardless of if you're going solo or with many other people.
Yeah. And one thing that's definitely recommended, and I think you should do if you're going solo, they recommend to get a winch, because it's basically the best and self-independent, I guess, recovery gear that you can.
So that's like a must-have. Anyway, that's got to be it for recovery gear.
Now on to the next part of the video, which is how to drive in different types of terrain.
So when we're talking about how to drive in four drive in different types of terrain, we're just got to split it into around two. We're going to talk about, firstly, driving on things like in the sand and the beach. We're also going to talk about how to drive in like muddy areas or in like little things of water, and also how to drive on rocks. But first, we've got to start with sandy tracks. So like we've talked about earlier, first, let's just say what you need to bring, the main things you want to bring. So with this, it's very important, the tire pressure. So as you see, I've got here, it shows 10 to 18 PSI on your tires when you're driving on, let's say, soft sand, but nothing like, it's not going to be hard, but it's going to be like normal sand. It's usually quite soft. So the reason you want to do this, because firstly, when you're driving on sand, it's very easy to dig into the sand, and that's typically how you would get stuck. So what the flattening of the tires this much does, it basically creates more of a surface area, because when you drive, basically your tires flatten, and it gives you more traction with the ground, because your car basically has a more surface area that is being covered, so you have therefore more grip to the ground. Also, with the tires, it says 10 to 18 psi. The way you tell which side of the spectrum you're more on, if it's 10 psi, if you have 10 psi, usually it's on softer sand. But a very important thing to know is the size of your tires, because if you have like 19-inch tires, so like quite small tires for an SUV, or like a four-wheel drive, you don't want to put it to 10 psi, because what would actually happen is it would flatten so much, since your tires at 19 inches wouldn't actually be that tall at all. It would compress too much, and you can actually damage your rims. So if you got bigger tires, you can go lower. But if you've got 19-inch tires, definitely go more like 18 psi to like 20ish, 15ish. So yeah, that's how you can tell for your tires. And like we said earlier, you definitely want to bring a tire gauge at least, and a tire pump. So that's what you want to bring. Another very important thing, as we mentioned earlier, is a shovel, because at the beach, obviously, there's a lot of sand, and
Get
that's
bogged.
where you would get stuck. And it's very easy just to grab a shovel and dig your wheels out to give your wheels a bit more space to spin and get yourself out. So it's very important to be a shovel. It doesn't matter what size, just best you can do.
Bigger the better is recommended. And another thing that's recommended to get out of sand when you're bogged, obviously a shovel, but to help the like to get the actual getting out process of the sand, that's where max tracks / recovery tracks come in handy. And 4 is obviously better because it creates more surface area for your wheels to go in.
And they can also act as a shovel if you
Yeah, you
really
can
want.
use them as a shovel because they're, I guess, scoopy.
Also, with this, you want to make sure that you're bringing a snatch strap, because in the sand, it's especially when there's steep hills or small dunes that you got to come over. That's where you typically get stuck, and sand's actually quite a difficult thing to drive. And you think, especially if you're doing like difficult sand tracks, because you can get stuck very easily. And a snatch strap is very good because in the sand you just need a little bit of momentum to go going forward. So a snatch strap, as with the other ones, is very easy to bring, and definitely bring it when you're going onto the beach. All right, so now let's talk a bit about how you want to drive on the sand. So with driving on sand, it's got to be a bit different from your regular forward driving, which we'll get on a bit later on the different terrains. So when you're driving in sand, a first tip that a lot of people that do this a lot, know what they're doing. They say that you don't want to be turning too much, and you want to try as much as best you can to drive in a straight direction, in a straight line. You don't want to be turning your wheels, because firstly, when you turn, obviously you're digging into the sand more, and causing you to get stuck. So the best way is to stay straight. That way you can maintain the most speed, and you're not digging yourself into the sand in any way. So that's definitely a big tip on when you're driving. So yeah, that's got to pretty much do it for sand. Let me just check if we've got anything else here. Oh yeah, one more thing I want to get to is there's something in your forward drive that there's usually an option for low range or high range forward driving. So basically, for most situations, you got to be able to use high range forward drive, because sand is usually not a very difficult thing to drive on when you're just at a regular beach. So high range will provide you enough traction and enough speed to get you across. But if it's a more difficult thing and you need to climb your way out, or you just think you're better off going, you might as well go low range, because it'll give you a bit more traction, and it will help you crawl out of a sticky
Yeah,
situation.
so that's probably something with soft sand or uneven sand, stuff like
Or
that.
yeah, so something where it's basically going to be harder to drive, and there's more bumps and hills. So yeah, that's going to do it for sandy tracks. All right, so now let's talk about water and mud crossings. We're mainly going to talk about water crossings, but these things sort of also apply
Each other.
to mud, because yeah. Okay, so first, let's talk about some things you want to make sure your car has before attempting to go into any crossing that let's say a deep water crossing. So firstly, you want to make sure you've got a snorkel. So a snorkel, as we mentioned earlier, is obviously for breathing clean, cooler air. But as we also mentioned, it's very good if you're going into deep water crossings, because no water will get into the intake area, because it's obviously higher up on the vehicle. So that's a basic. But the thing with this is, like we said earlier, you want to make sure you've got a differential breather and a suspension breather, because these things go hand in hand. Because there's no point getting a snorkel to prevent water getting in if you don't have a diff breather and a suspension breather. So with the diff breathers, the way it works, basically it's a one-way valve, so there's only stuff coming out. And so when you're driving, because the engine, it gets very hot, and what happens actually when you hit the water is obviously very cold. There's
In most cases, unless it's been hot all summer. But
there's
still, it's generally cold.
all of a sudden, there's the it starts to contract inside, and basically it becomes a sort of a suction sort of thing, like a vacuum, and that's how water can get in, because you go into the water and it starts to suck in the water. So this happens in water. It doesn't always happen all the time, but it can happen, and that can cause serious damage. You know, once you get water in your engine, it's not what you want. So next, like we said, suspension breathers. These are the same thing. They also do the same similar thing. You don't want any water getting in there, and they act like a hose. Nothing really to talk about there. And so what these things do, remember, they just they elevate it, so they make the intake point higher up. So when you're going in water, they'll still be able to suck, become like a vacuum and suck in air, but they won't suck in water because they're above the water. So make sure, even if you've got your breathers, make sure that the water is not too high. And this is a very important thing before you attempt going in any mud or water, is to check the depth or the surface area. So you want to make sure you're checking the depth and the surface of the water crossing that you're attempting. So the best way to do this is just make sure you're not wearing your shoes. So just walk in, maybe with a stick if you want. Just make sure it's not too deep, and make sure the surface area is not going to give you any problems. Now, that's the first step. But now, let's talk about how you got to attempt this, how you got to drive. So make sure you don't take a running head start and just speed into it. The only case where they say you should or could do this is when there's like a not too deep like stream and it's going quite fast, and you just want to get a head start to quickly cross it, and it's not too big either. But what you want to do, you want to attempt this, come in it quite slowly, and you never want to speed up in these situations, because that's how water can splash into your engine. So what you want to do, you want to attempt this slowly. I'll show a clip of a video I've learned from. You want to attempt this slowly, and you want to sort of ride the wave. So when you go in, basically what happens, a wave forms around your vehicle. So it forms around the pressure point at the front, the focal point of which the pressure is being applied to.
Yeah,
it's called a bow wave or bow wave. It's commonly found in ships when basically there's a wave around the front, and like it comes around the sides of the thing. And basically what you want to do, best way to indicate your speed, is you want to ride with the speed of the wave, so you're not crashing into it and it's not just flowing off in front of you. So you want to ride it with a steady pace, not too slow, because that's how you get stuck and immediately water will start flooding in. So you want to start doing it slowly, ride the wave. And if you don't, that's how water can get in into your engine and stop your motor. So that's definitely very important in driving. But make sure, even if you can make it, you want to analyze the depth of the water and all the things like that. So even if you think you can make it, don't attempt anything where you risk too much. Also, you want to make sure your distributor is safe from water. Usually this happens, this comes in stock, but just you want to double check.
Yeah, so waterproof your distributor.
Yeah. All right, so that's got to do it, I'm pretty sure, for water and mud crossings. All right, so now we're going to be talking about rocky trails or rock crawling. The thing is, we're not really going to be talking about it because it's sort of, you've got to see it to know how to do it.
So it's a driving thing, and we are underage to drive. But we will show you a few minutes of a video.
2 minutes 40-ish.
Yeah. We'll recap on it after.
So his name is Mad Matt. That's what he goes by. He just explains basically how to drive, exactly how you want to do it, because that's obviously got to be better. But for this, obviously, you got to be wanting to bring your regular gear, your snatch strap, you got to want to have your...
Yeah, you can have some of those, you can have a tree trunk protector for an extra strap. You can even have the dead man thing to tie to a rock or something, say you need to pull yourself out. A winch is good to have here.
Yeah, but the thing is, this isn't like a separate thing like driving on the beach. Cause that's completely different. So you just bring your standard stuff. Obviously, things like a shovel's not really going to help you here, but this is more just to know how to drive. So we're just going to show you a little 2 minute 40 video, and we'll just recap it.
G'day, I'm Mad Matt. When we're out four-wheel driving, oftentimes you'll come across a rock step like this one. Check it out, a rock step. So how do you get up something like this? Well, there's a few basic techniques that'll help you drive up it. And I'll tell you, most of it is right there in the right foot. Let's check it out. Now, one of the tricks is when you're going up a rock step, you'll hit bumps and stuff. Rest your toe against the kick panel there on the accelerator, and that will just give your foot some resistance so that you can actually really control the accelerator quite finely as you hit the bumps. Now, a rock step like this one here, pretty decent height, you know, nearly up to my waist. I'm 6 foot tall. You wouldn't think a vehicle could get up that's not really extremely modified. With a bit of driving technique, you can get up this quite easily, and I'm going to show you how. Most of driving up a step is about speed, and as little of it as possible. You want the tyres to really gain traction and maintain traction as you're climbing. It's also about control of power. You know, I was saying about the right foot. So as you approach the step, you're low speed, only as much power as you need to get to the step. Once you get to the step, you're going to anticipate and feed the power on, but only enough to get you up the step. You only need to make enough power to lift the vehicle. You don't want to break traction by wheel spinning or anything like that, because once you start doing that, you're really losing control of the vehicle. Let's go down, get in the car, and I'll drive you up here. So as we're climbing up here, I'm just giving it just the amount of throttle it needs to get up the hill. Now I'm anticipating the rock shelf, squeezing the throttle to give it as much power as it needs. That's all. No extra power. And up she climbs. How good's that? No big wheel spins, no big revs, just controlled, giving it as much power as it needs, and that's all. I'm Mad Matt. Stay safe on the trail.
All right, so you just saw that video. It was he explained it pretty well, I thought. Definitely better than we could have ever explained it. So now that you know how to drive, let's just recap it a bit. So obviously you saw how with that type of driving, you know, it looks like it could really damage the bottom of the car.
So it's very important to take your time and possibly even have someone outside the car directing you where to go.
Yeah, so that's where the walkie-talkies come into play, and also the bash plates. If you're doing really extreme rock climbing at this level, bash plates I would definitely recommend, because you definitely don't want to, you know, somehow you get stuck and then it full on crunches the bottom of your car. So definitely be safe and get a bash plates if you're doing this sort of drive.
And he said how when you're rock crawling, you want to basically use as little speed as possible, and you want to basically just use the friction to get you up. Just the tires,
traction.
Yeah, the traction. So yeah, the traction basically pulling you up the thing. You know what I mean? And you want to do this slowly and cautiously.
Yeah. And that's a trend for driving. You know, it's all about, you know, timing it right, taking your time, and not just giving as much power, because that's how, you know, with other cars, you know, there might be like a sports car with a lot of power, but these things are designed to, you know, the suspension to, like, you know, move with the wheels, you know, so you can properly crawl. And make sure your car can actually do this, because a lot of vehicles actually will get stuck here.
So if you're wondering on the PSI for rock crawling or just driving through rocks,
things like this even.
Yeah, or just like rocky, muddy terrains, the best PSI recommended is 16 to 24.
So a bit more than the sand.
Have an air compressor and maybe a
gauge.
Tire deflator.
Or a gauge.
And we forgot to mention for water crossings and mud crossings, if you're wondering PSI for that, basically around the mid-20s PSI to 30 PSI.
And for mud, it's also a bit lower, similar to the rocks.
Yeah, maybe lower 20s or even less than 20, possibly. Depends how thick the mud is.
Yeah, so this is a smaller part of the video. We wanted to talk more about what to bring, but we've already explained that, so we don't have to talk about it here.
Okay, so now we're going on to the last part of the video.
The conclusion of the video. All right, so now we're on to the conclusion. So before we just summarize everything, there's one thing we have to talk about, and that's where you can drive and basically
where you can find where to drive.
and the camps you can find to drive them.
So you may be wondering, like, where do I look? Like, I don't know where any tracks are. I can just go to an area I know, but I don't know where any specific tracks are.
The thing with these, a lot of these places actually require permits, so you can go there, especially like things like beaches, and a lot of them are closed in certain months. And
Yeah, because of too much rubbish or
certain seasons
or maybe
or whatever.
Or sometimes you need permits because they're, I don't know, it's like a sacred land, or they don't want people to ruin it, so it's very limited. And to find things like that, to find when they close, where they are, and just information about it in general, you have to go to your local forward driving forum or local national park forum. For us here in Victoria, Australia,
There's a site.
It's the government website, parks.vic.gov.au, and it's Parks Victoria, basically. And
It'll be something similar
and there's an area in forward driving, and it says things you need to know, seasonal road closures, and tracks, and basically things like that. And there's also other websites that aren't government websites.
So it doesn't really matter. So
you
just
can find.
before you go anywhere, make sure you search up the area.
Yeah.
You could probably just pop it into Google.
The worst, and the worst thing to find is to like be thinking about a track, you arrive there and it's closed, and your whole trip's ruined. So
make sure to call up, find out.
Yeah, call up or just look on their website.
Also, just to finish up on campsites, there's a lot of sites actually closed because there's too much rubbish. So there's this new thing going that people are doing: bring 2 bags for rubbish, one for you, and one to basically pick up other people's rubbish. So it'd be a nice thing to do if you're going, because apparently a lot of places are, not open to the public because of this. So if you think
if
about
you want to jump along with
if
that,
you're going, you can do that if you would like to. That's just a thing I wanted to add. But yeah, so let's just conclude this video. So there's a lot of things that we've put in this list, and we've put a lot of videos and photos to give you a visual look at it. So you can basically decide for yourself if you'll need it or not, because a lot of things
they're extras.
They're extras. Most of these things you won't even need,
Yeah.
unless the bare essentials, like the shovel type things. But because most people won't be doing extreme forward driving, but we've put things for everyone, from just basic, the lowest.
Yeah,
the
you
lowest,
can decide.
and,
You can decide what
most
suits
extreme.
for you. You can decide if you want things like from the solo traveler kit and the other essential kit. Just pick what you need, what you have, but just make sure you have the bare essentials, because some of them are basically almost you can't live without them. You can't go without them.
Yeah.
So pick what you need. Eventually, work your way. If you're going into this forward driving thing more, definitely work your way up to some of the extras and modifications, because they will make life easier. And
yeah, I think that's got to sum up this video. It was a cool topic to do, a bit different. It's like we make something a bit different every time anyway. But yeah, it was a fun topic to do, and it's good when you're doing topics that you're actually interested in. So it's a lot more enjoyable during the process. Anyway, that's got to be it from us.
yeah, if you like the video, drop a like and think about subscribing.
Anyway, see you next time.
See you next time.